At their anniversary party, they gave my sister a house key wrapped in gold ribbon. Me? They handed me a printed job ad. My dad smirked. This feels more like your level. Turns out, he forged my signature to buy that same house. I just smiled, then gave them a gift that made their faces go pale. Can you imagine being handed a job listing, an entry-level one, on the same night your sister gets a house key, tied with a golden ribbon, like she's royalty? And then, to find out that house, your childhood home, was bought with your forged signature? That night, I just smiled, but the gift I gave them in return? It drained the color right out of their faces. It was their anniversary, and the rain had followed me all the way from Virginia, just slapping the windshield like it had something personal to say. I pulled into my parents' driveway in Pennsylvania, headlights barely cutting through the mist. Lily's car was already there, of course. Spotless white SUV. She probably flew in, skipped the storm entirely. I grabbed my bag and the small gift I'd spent weeks on, a photo album of our childhood. I knocked twice, pushed the door open, just like always. But this time, it didn't feel like home. It felt polite. "Oh, Kala," my mom said, glancing up from the kitchen island, her voice too bright. "You made it." Lily was already perched on a bar stool, laughing at something Dad had said. She waved, her diamond engagement ring practically blinding me. "You look tired." "Long drive," I mumbled, dropping my bag by the stairs. Dad just nodded. "You should have come last night. We had cocktails." I forced a smile. Traffic through Delaware had added almost 2 extra hours. Lily slid off her stool, heels clicking, and gave me a quick, formal hug, barely touching. Her fiancé, Ryan, gave me a firm handshake, like I was some colleague he vaguely remembered. I couldn't help but notice the gold ribbon box sitting in the center of the island. Perfectly wrapped, the kind that screams expensive boutique. Lily kept glancing at it, her eyes gleaming. "You didn't have to bring anything," Mom said, her eyes landing on my gift. She took it and placed it beside a stack of paper towels, like it was a grocery list. I bit my cheek. Dinner was around 6. Lily had changed into a floral dress. I was still in my travel jeans. Mom made pot roast, Lily's favorite. Dad poured everyone wine except me. Still on that health kick, he half laughed, handing me sparkling water. "Sure," I said. The conversation flowed easily between them. I just watched. The way they leaned in for Ryan, the way Mom brushed imaginary crumbs off Lily's sleeve. It was like watching a curated dinner party, and I was the unexpected +1. After dessert, Dad cleared his throat and stood. "Lily," he beamed, "your mother, and I wanted to give you something special." He lifted the gold ribbon box. She gasped, genuinely, untied the ribbon with the ease of someone used to opening presents meant only for her. Inside was a small white box. She opened it. "A key?" "A key to what?" She laughed. "Our house," Dad said. "The one on Riverbend. It's yours now. You've earned it. You've always been the responsible one." Her hand flew to her chest. Mom beamed. Ryan clapped her on the back. They didn't notice I wasn't clapping. Then Mom turned to me. "And for you, Kala." She handed me a plain white envelope. No ribbon, just my name in faint ink. Inside? A printed job listing. Administrative assistant, entry level. Salary $38,000. Location Harrisburg. I just stared. Dad chuckled. "We figured this suits you better. Something manageable. Closer to your pace." I swallowed, but there was nothing to swallow. Lily kept smiling. Ryan sipped his wine. The key in her hand had an address engraved, 542, Riverbend Lane. Our old house. My childhood bedroom. The swing Dad built. The lilac tree Mom and I planted when I was 9. All of it. Hers. I looked down at the paper in my hand, then back at the table. "Thank you," I said quietly. Lily beamed. "Isn't it great? I'm thinking we'll remodel the kitchen. Knock out that wall near the den." I smiled the way you do at a funeral when you're trying not to cry. "Sounds perfect." I excused myself and walked toward the guest bathroom. The hallway lights flickered. That's when I saw them, stacked near the laundry room. 3 moving boxes, labeled in thick black marker, Kala's room. Books. Kala's closet. Kala Miss K. they'd already packed up my childhood. The bathroom was cold. I locked the door, leaned against the sink, and pulled out my phone. Instinct, maybe. And there it was. An email from my bank, dated 3 weeks ago. A mortgage transfer confirmation. The house had changed ownership. And I was listed as co-signer. Except I hadn't signed anything. My fingers went numb. I scrolled through the PDF. The signature, my name, was perfect. But I hadn't written it. I hadn't even known they were selling the house. My father forged it. A slow, steady hum filled my ears. Rage. Quiet, buried, rising. I splashed cold water on my face, dried it, and walked back out. Everyone was laughing about something Ryan had said. I didn't ask. I picked up my bag, said I had an early meeting. No one stopped me. As I reached the front door, I heard my mother's voice, not whispering this time, just loud enough to carry. She should be grateful anyone still thinks of her. Outside, the rain had eased into a fine mist. The sky was turning dark blue. I looked down. The gold ribbon from Lily's box had fallen onto the porch, damp and curling. I picked it up, slid it into my coat pocket. Not because it was pretty, but because it reminded me what they valued and what they thought I was worth. I looked at that ribbon and smiled, not because I was happy, but because I finally understood exactly what kind of gift they'd given me. I dropped the ribbon into the ceramic dish by the door and finally exhaled. That kind of breath that sits low in your chest. The kind that only escapes when something in you breaks loose. Not violently, just quietly, like a string snapping in the dark. My apartment was still. Not the cozy kind of still, but the kind that feels like nobody waited up for you. The kind that reminded you, this was a space I returned to, not a place anyone expected me to walk into. My damp coat was slumped on the chair where I'd tossed it. The job listing sat on my coffee table, mockingly crisp and dry. My fingers hovered over it. Not yet. I clicked on the old coffee maker. The aroma usually comforted me, but that morning, it felt borrowed from someone else's life. The steam curled upward while the words from last night played back in perfect clarity. This suits you better. Something manageable. Manageable. I leaned on the counter and whispered to myself, I wasn't invited to celebrate. I was summoned to witness. It didn't feel like humiliation anymore. Not exactly. The sting was still there, yes. But beneath it, something sharper had started to form. A shape. A clarity. The mug warmed my palms as I sat down, pulling my knees up. A draft slipped in through the old window. I sipped and stared across the room at stacks of mail. My own handwriting, sharp, decisive strokes. I thought about the mortgage confirmation, the one with my name, or someone pretending to be me. The signature had been too neat, too patient. It had none of the rush or rhythm my pen left behind. I stood slowly, reached for my journal, and opened to a blank page. My pen hovered. Age 10, they missed my science fair. Lily had ballet. Age 14, Mom told me not to wear that blue dress. Said it made Lily look washed out. Age 18, they skipped my birthday dinner. SAT prep for Lily. Age 22, my graduation photo was never framed. I paused. I had walked across a stage with honors. My father shook my hand that day with a nod, like I was some intern who delivered decent work. But Lily? Her kindergarten recital photo still hung in the hallway in a gilded frame, next to her high school prom crown. That wasn't memory. That was pattern. I dropped the pen, too tired to write. My eyes burned, but I didn't cry. My phone vibrated. Lily. A picture of her new kitchen. Marble countertops. Still surreal. Can't wait for you to see it done. No apology. No, hey, sorry about dinner. Just a digital slap on the back. I started to type, enjoy it. You always get what you want. But my thumb hovered, then moved to delete, line by line. I stared at the blank message field, then backed out entirely. Instead, I opened an old folder I hadn't touched in months, estate transfer. Grandpa's property. I'd made it when our grandfather passed years ago. My name was there, next to Lily's, on the original deed transfer. Grandpa had left it to both of us. I remembered that day. We'd both signed at the same kitchen table. Lily twirling a pen like it was a chore, me reading every clause twice. I clicked through PDFs until I found the file labeled Initial Deed. Cosigners. There it was, black and white. This wasn't an oversight. This was surgical. I shut the laptop and sat still for a while. The refrigerator hummed. Outside, someone scraped ice off a windshield. Life didn't pause just because yours cracked open. I stood, walked to my little desk by the window, and printed out the mortgage document, the forged one, the signature pretending to be mine. I circled it in red ink, one clean, confident circle. Then I taped it next to the front door, right next to where the ribbon sat in the ceramic dish. On top of the page, I scrolled a single sentence, know where you were erased, and start there. I stepped back, looked at it for a long moment. The only thing more dangerous than a daughter they thought was weak is one who stops needing their permission to exist. The Allegheny County Recorder's office was just past downtown, sandwiched between a dry cleaner and a pawn shop. The kind of place you never visited unless something had gone terribly wrong, or someone had made sure you wouldn't know until it was too late. The clerk, Martha, looked me up and down. "Hi," I said, my voice steady. "I'm trying to find records on a property. It used to be under my name. I believe there's been a fraudulent transfer." She didn't flinch. I guess she'd heard worse. I gave her the address, slid my driver's license under the glass. She returned with a few pages. "This what you're looking for?" I took it. The original deed, co-signed by Grandpa, myself, and Lily. But the next page was newer. A title transfer. Dated 3 months ago. Buyer, Lily Bishop. Seller, Ronald Bishop. Price, $1. My name was nowhere. But my forged signature, shaky, barely mimicking my handwriting, lingered at the bottom of the previous revision, like a stain no one had bothered to clean. In the contact field, an email. RB Bishop 63A. Not even an effort to hide it. A lump sat in my throat, but I didn't let it rise. "Can I get a certified copy?" I asked quietly. She nodded. I paid in cash, thanked her, and walked out into the chilly mid-morning air. I didn't cry. Not there. Not yet. On the bus ride back, I watched the city slide past. Gray buildings, damp sidewalks, people rushing through routines that didn't know me, didn't hurt me. My fingers tightened around the document. Grandpa used to drive us out every summer to that lot, back when the ground was nothing but soft clay and oak roots. He let me pick the tile for the kitchen. Green, blue, the color of the creek. Lily was away at camp that summer. She didn't care about tile. "That kitchen's got your name on it," he said once, brushing dust off my shoulder. "One day this place will be yours to breathe in." And now? Now it was someone else's Instagram backdrop, a showcase for the daughter who never lifted a hammer. I closed my eyes and felt the ache in my chest spread like a slow bruise. Not from the loss of property, but of belonging. It wasn't just a house. It was proof I had mattered once, and now even that had been scrubbed away, like I was never supposed to exist in the story. By the time I got home, a fine drizzle had started. I shook out my coat and placed the certified deed copy on my kitchen table, right next to the job ad my father had handed me. The one with highlighter all over it. Entry level. No experience needed. No degree required. I sat down. No degree required. They really meant that. For Lily, a $600,000 house with a walk-in pantry and a backyard fire pit. For me, a job flipping sandwiches. I picked up a pen and drew a line from the glowing yellow highlight to my name, barely legible, forged on the title transfer. 2 artifacts, 1 truth. That's when the smile came. Not wide, not joyous, just a small, knowing pull at the corners of my mouth. This wasn't over. I stood, crossed to the closet, and pulled out a dusty gray file box I hadn't touched in years. Inside were tax records, bank letters, Grandpa's old files, wills, property outlines, trust documents I used to help him organize before he got sick. I carried it to the table. My hands moved slowly, with precision. No shaking now, just quiet. I spent the next few hours scanning every single page into a secure folder I named. They forgot I could read contracts. The sun had set by the time I finished. My back ached. My eyes stung. But the fire inside me had settled into something solid. At the bottom of the file box, beneath the older papers, I found a folded envelope labeled in Grandpa's handwriting, transfer terms. Lily and Kala. Notarized copy. I didn't open it. Not yet. Some things needed the right time. For now, I taped the certified copy of the fraudulent transfer to the wall beside my fridge. Tomorrow, I'd start building my timeline. Not to fight them. Not yet. Just to understand every corner of what had been taken. Because the moment I stopped expecting fairness was the moment I started building leverage. I hadn't even taken off my shoes when I saw the missed calls. 3 of them. Same unknown number. No voicemail transcription. Just a little red dot blinking. I tossed my keys into the bowl by the door, let my bag slide off my shoulder. The ache from my double shift at the diner still clung to my legs. I stared at the screen a moment longer before pressing play. There was a pause. Then a woman's voice came through. Sharp, low, urgent. He said you'd never find out, but you should check the second drawer in your father's study before it's too late. Click. That was it. I stood still in the middle of my apartment, heart pounding. The voice wasn't familiar, not a relative, not a neighbor. But there was something in the way she said it, like it hurt her to speak. I replayed the message again and again. He said you'd never find out, before it's too late. I didn't know what I hated more, that someone knew something and hadn't told me until now, or that they assumed I'd never have the guts to dig. I sat down slowly at the kitchen table, trying to piece together what the second drawer might mean. Then it hit me. Dad's study, the desk with the brass handles, the one only he used. For a moment, I felt like a teenager again, shut out of grown-up conversations, listening from behind closed doors. That old ache of invisibility? It was starting to fade, replaced by something harder, sharper. I picked up the phone and called Janine, my old babysitter. She used to help clean the house back before Mom pretended we were too professional for help. She picked up after 2 rings. Janine, it's Kala. Oh, sweetheart, she said, surprised. It's been a long time. I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. There was a pause, then gently, I'll try. Do you remember ever seeing my dad forge anything? My name? The silence stretched. I heard her exhale, like she'd been holding her breath for years. One time, she said finally. He was sitting at that desk, your grandfather's desk. Muttering to himself, said, she'll thank me later. She always does. He was holding an envelope. Your name was on it. My skin prickled. What was in it? I never saw, but I remember thinking it wasn't right. The way he kept rewriting whatever was inside. I felt something twist in my stomach. Not pain. Something closer to fury with a leash on it. Thank you, Janine, I said, my voice quieter than I meant. That night, I didn't sleep. I waited. I knew my parents would be out at some dinner. Mom posted their every meal online like she was reviewing Michelin stars from the suburbs. I waited until the timestamp on her latest steak tartare was live. Then I grabbed my coat. The garden planter on the side of the house hadn't moved in years. I knelt beside it, fingers numb from the cold, and pulled out the spare key. Same one I used back in high school when I'd forget mine at swim practice. The door creaked, just barely. As I slipped inside, everything smelled the same. Wood polish and lemon-scented dusting spray. Familiar, but not comforting. I moved straight down the hall. The study door was ajar. The brass desk gleamed in the faint light. I pulled the second drawer. At first, just old tax files and manila folders. Then, under a folder labeled discretionary, I found it. An envelope marked trust reassignment. Call it to Lily, dated months before the anniversary dinner. Notarized. Filed. Deliberate. I held it in my hands like it might burn through my skin. They'd planned everything. The job ad, the public humiliation, the exclusion from the family photo. This wasn't impulsive. It was a strategy. They didn't just want me out. They wanted to make it look like I was never meant to be there at all. I could feel my throat tighten, but I didn't cry. Then I noticed something tucked behind the envelope. A folded sheet of notebook paper, not typed, handwritten. The handwriting was shaky, but I knew it. If you're reading this, it means they've buried what's yours. Follow the coordinates. Below the line was a string of numbers, scribbled like an afterthought. I stared at them, heart racing. It was his handwriting. Grandpa's. And in that moment, I felt something I hadn't let myself feel in weeks: hope. He knew. Somehow, he saw it coming, and he left me a trail. I tucked the envelope and the note inside my coat and pushed the drawer shut, careful to leave everything as it was. I backed out of the room, turned the key behind me, and slid the planter back into place. By the time I stepped onto the sidewalk, the wind had picked up. It cut across my cheeks, but I didn't shiver. I was too warm. I thought the worst part was the betrayal, but I hadn't even begun to peel back the lies. I didn't sleep much after I found the file in the study. The words on the envelope kept echoing in my head like a whisper through a locked door. Trust reassignment. Call it to Lily. They had made the switch long before the family dinner, long before they offered me that job posting like a cheap consolation prize. By Saturday morning, my decision was made. I booked a rental car and packed only what I needed: a change of clothes, my phone, a flashlight, and the sealed note with those handwritten coordinates. The GPS led me north, past the outskirts of town, beyond where streetlights stretched, down winding back roads where cell service flickered. I hadn't been this far out in years. But when I turned down that gravel path and saw the cabin again, it all came rushing back. I must have been 8, maybe 9, the last time I was here. I remembered how Grandpa would hold my hand a little tighter as we approached the lake. He used to tell me this was his thinking place. No phones, no noise, just trees, water, and truth. The cabin had aged like an old photograph. Edges curling, colors faded. The wooden porch groaned beneath my steps. The key still sat behind the top plank, just where I'd seen him hide it once when I was little. I unlocked the door and stepped into stillness. Dust motes danced in the sunlight, cutting through slats in the boarded windows. A faded quilt still lay over the couch. There was a coffee mug with a crack down the side, still perched in the sink like it had been left yesterday. The silence was heavy, like the air knew I wasn't just visiting. I started with the floorboards near the fireplace. Something about that spot tugged at my memory. After a few careful pries with a fireplace poker, one board came loose. And there it was, a black folder, thick, bound shut with an old wax seal. Beside it, a dusty cassette recorder. My chest tightened. My fingers hesitated on the play button. Then I heard his voice. "Kala, if you're hearing this, it means the worst has happened." It was him, my grandfather. His voice was slower than I remembered, raspier, but full of intent. "They erased you to secure the house and the future inheritance for Lily. I never agreed to that. Never. I left you something only you can claim. It's not just about the house. It's about everything they stole from you. Starting when you were a child." I stood frozen, barely breathing. He continued, "There's a trust one created. It was meant for you, but the clause was tricky. Your father made sure of that. To claim it, you have to present yourself with identification before your 30th birthday. And if you're hearing this, Kala, you have 23 days left." I stared down at my hands like they'd turned to stone. 23 days. The same trust they'd buried. The same one my name had been wiped from. The tape clicked off, leaving the room painfully quiet. I sat there for a long while, maybe minutes, maybe longer. I could hear the creak of the cabin walls, the rustle of leaves outside. And in that quiet, old memories came crawling back, the kind I'd boxed up and pushed down deep. The time my father told me, "You're not like Lily. You ask too many questions." The school project Lily won an award for, one I had researched, drawn, and written from start to finish. The look on Mom's face every time I challenged something Lily said. Her smile would freeze and she'd whisper, "Don't start something. Just let her have it." How many times had I swallowed things just to keep the peace? And what did that peace cost me? I opened the file next. Inside was a notarized letter from Grandpa's legal advisor confirming the existence and terms of the trust. The signature was dated nearly 10 years ago. Underneath it, I found copies of letters between Grandpa and the estate lawyer. Pages yellowed, but still clear. And one handwritten note slipped between them. The lawyer moved to Arizona. If you want to fight, you'll need him. My next move suddenly felt real, tangible. I was going to find him. They had counted on me being passive, being quiet, being too late. But now, for the first time in years, I wasn't behind. I wasn't guessing. I stood up slowly, tucking the documents into my bag. Before I stepped out, I took one last look around the cabin. My eyes landed on a photo frame turned backward on the dusty bookshelf. I flipped it over. It was me, 8 years old, laughing by the lakeside, mud on my knees. Grandpa's arms slung around my shoulders. I smiled, small and tired, and whispered, "I'm still here, Grandpa." Then I locked the door behind me. As I walked back to the car, wind whipped through the trees. It was colder than I remembered up here. But inside, I felt a heat building. They buried my name, but they forgot something. My name still breathes where they can't reach. I boarded the early flight to Arizona with nothing but a worn carry-on and the file tucked close to my chest like armor. I hadn't slept much. My mind kept circling back to my grandfather's voice, crackling through that old cassette recorder, and the weight of the phrase, "Only you can claim this." That sentence had lodged itself deep in my chest. By the time I landed in Sedona, the sun had begun stretching itself across the red rock cliffs like a warm shawl. The contrast between the wide desert openness and the narrow silence I'd lived in lately almost made me dizzy. I picked up the rental, a beige sedan that smelled faintly of lemon wipes and stress, and drove toward the motel I'd booked. Simple 2 stories, no frills, just a place to breathe. The law office listed in the file wasn't hard to find. It sat on the corner of an older street, sandwiched between a hardware store and a florist. The brick exterior had faded into a burnt orange, and the rusted nameplate above the door read, "Raymond G. Eldridge, ESA." The door creaked slightly as I stepped inside, and I half expected dust to swirl up like in an old movie. An older man looked up from behind a battered oak desk. His glasses slid down his nose, and he squinted at me before his expression shifted, recognition blooming slow and warm. "Well," he said, standing carefully. "Kala, I thought I'd never see you again." There was no pretense in his tone, just a sort of quiet surprise, like he'd been waiting without knowing it. "You looked just like your grandfather did when he was mad about something. Same fire behind the eyes." I smiled despite myself. He always said I was stubborn. Raymond motioned for me to sit, and I did, folding my hands together to still their shaking. He pulled open a drawer and took out a sealed envelope. The handwriting on the front was unmistakably Grandpa's. The ink had faded, but the intention was still loud, "Only if she comes." "I've had that in my desk for 7 years, Raymond said. He updated his estate plan the same summer Lily started getting real close with your mother. Told me he had a feeling, a bad one. Said if things ever went south, this letter would explain what he couldn't finish saying in person." He handed it over gently, like it was something sacred. My fingers trembled as I opened the seal. Inside was an official amendment, signed, notarized, and clearly stamped. My name was listed as the sole heir, not only to the house everyone had fought over, but also a second property near Aspen. I blinked at the page. I'd never even heard of a second property. Raymond leaned back. "That house in Aspen, it was bought in your name when you were 16 under a guardianship clause. It only activates if you're legally proven to have been defrauded or estranged by your immediate family." My stomach sank and tightened at once. "And given what they did," he nodded. "There's a case here, but we'll need evidence. One credible testimony about your exclusion and a certified handwriting expert to examine the forged sale documents they used." The air felt heavy around me, like the truth carried its own atmosphere. I tucked the documents back into the envelope and slipped it into my bag. For the first time in weeks, I felt the fog around me thin. We walked a short distance to a diner nearby, the kind of place where the coffee tastes like burnt hope and the waitress already knows your order by the second visit. Raymond ordered black coffee. I asked for tea. The silence between us wasn't awkward. It was a pause filled with purpose. After a few sips, he looked over at me and asked, "Kala, I know it hurts, but why now? Why fight back after all these years?" I stirred the tea slowly. The steam fogged my glasses. I took a breath and said, "Because this isn't just about the house anymore. It's about showing my younger self she wasn't crazy for feeling unwanted. I let them tell me for too long that I was overreacting, imagining things, making it all up. But I wasn't. And I can't let that silence be the only story she remembers." He nodded, a soft sort of understanding in his eyes. You were always the quiet one, even when you came into the office with your grandfather. But I remember you watched everything. Listened to the details no one else caught. I folded my hands on the table. It's time they realize I've always been watching, too. Raymond reached into his briefcase and pulled out a fresh copy of the document. If you're ready, we can start the claim this week. I took it with both hands, carefully, as if the paper might break and maybe a piece of me had been waiting to hold something solid like this. As we left the diner and stepped back into the Arizona sun, something shifted inside me. I wasn't the scared little girl waiting to be picked anymore. This time, I wouldn't let anyone speak for me again, not even an ink. By the time I stepped off the bus back in town, the sun was dipping low over the hills, painting everything gold and soft, like it wanted to trick me into thinking this place still held peace. But I knew better. The only thing waiting for me was a message blinking coldly on my phone. We're having dinner to celebrate Lily's move-in. We'd like you to come, too. No hard feelings. No love, no hope you're well, no let's talk. Just an invite that sounded more like bait than an olive branch. I stared at it in the quiet of my motel room, the same one I'd booked for one night and never checked out of. The room was no bigger than a closet, with carpet that smelled like wet cotton and a rickety fan that clacked all night. But it gave me something I hadn't had in years: distance. Perspective. I didn't reply. I just stood up, smoothed my shirt, pulled on a dark cardigan, and tied my hair back. I didn't bring a file. I didn't wear jewelry. I didn't even wear perfume. I brought one thing: silence. Their driveway looked exactly the same. Cracked near the curb. Oil-stained under where Dad always parked. Porch light still flickering. I walked up the steps and rang the bell. A second later, the door swung open. "Oh, you made it," my mother said, her tone too sweet to be real. Her eyes flickered over me, down to my shoes. "You look stable for once." I gave a small nod. "Thanks." Inside, the table was already set. Polished forks, cloth napkins, even a little centerpiece of dried lavender. Trying too hard, like always. Lily was already seated, flipping her hair like a model at a shoot. She wore a pastel blouse I'd once left behind in a storage bin years ago. "Oh, look," she said, holding up a key with a golden ribbon tied around it. "It's official. I moved in this week." Dad cleared his throat from his chair, eyes not meeting mine. "Thought we'd do this right. Make it inclusive. Start fresh." I sat down across from them and reached for the water glass, half expecting it to be laced with something metaphorical. It was just water, flat and cold. The chicken was dry. The peas were overcooked. But no one was there for the food. Halfway through the meal, I set my fork down and asked, "Did you update the deed yet?" Just curious. Lily didn't miss a beat. "Oh, already done. It's in my name now, officially. We didn't want it in limbo." Dad chuckled awkwardly, like he was trying to pass it off as no big deal. "Had to sign a couple things for you. Nothing serious, just housekeeping." I tilted my head and smiled gently. "Did I use my left hand or right?" His eyes twitched. "What to sign?" I continued. The handwriting analyst was wondering, because the signature wasn't consistent with any of my verified documents. Odd, right? You could hear the clink of Lily's knife hitting the plate. Her mouth hung slightly open, then snapped shut. Mom tried to recover. "Let's not get dramatic. You're here. Let's move forward." But I wasn't interested in their stage directions anymore. I reached into my bag, pulled out a single folder, and laid it quietly on the table. "This is a cease and desist order," I said, still calm, still even. "It references forgery and the trust." Dad's face lost all its fake ease. Mom opened her mouth, but no words came. I leaned slightly forward. This is me saying no on paper with my actual hand. For a second, no one breathed. Even the air seemed to pause, unsure of where this was going. Then Lily scoffed, trying to regain footing. "That won't hold up. You don't have proof." I reached into my cardigan pocket and gently tapped my phone. "This conversation? It's being recorded. Every word, including when Dad admitted to signing for me." Her face paled, her jaw clenched. "You're spying now. That's disgusting." I looked at her squarely. "You want the house. I want the truth." I guess we both have our priorities. I didn't wait for them to respond. I rose, tucked my phone back into my pocket, and left the envelope behind. I walked out before dessert. Behind me, the room stayed silent, except for the sound of paper trembling in Lily's hand. I didn't slam the door when I left. I didn't need to, because this time, it would never open the same way again. 3 weeks passed quietly. No more dinner invitations, no texts from my mother, no snide emails from Lily. Just silence. And that was enough. The courthouse smelled like dust and lemon floor cleaner, like every civic building in the country. I sat on the wooden bench outside courtroom 4B with Miss Hartman, my attorney, next to me, flipping through the final set of documents. She didn't speak unless necessary. I appreciated that. We'd prepared. There was nothing more to say. Across the narrow hallway, they sat lined up like a trio in a portrait nobody asked for. My mother stiff-backed, her purse clutched like a shield. My father staring at the floor, knees tapping out a rhythm of guilt. And Lily smiling. That same crooked smirk she'd worn since the day she wrapped my house keys in a gold ribbon and announced they were hers. I didn't return her gaze. I didn't need to. I was already past whatever they thought this day would be. The bailiff opened the doors. Kala Jameson versus Lily Jameson and Howard and Beverly Jameson. Civil Hearing Room 4B. Inside, the room echoed with quiet authority. The judge, gray suit, rimless glasses, voice like gravel, nodded for us to begin. Miss Hartman opened cleanly, stating our case with a clarity that left no room for interpretation. Then came the exhibits. First, the signature report. She passed the forensic analysis to the judge and explained, the signature on the deed dated April 2nd, which the defendants claim belongs to Miss Jameson, does not match any of her verified legal signatures on file. Not even close. It was likely written by someone untrained in dominant hand mimicry. The judge studied the document for a beat too long. His brow didn't move, but the stillness said everything. Next came Janine. She wore a navy cardigan and shook as she took the stand, but her voice didn't falter. I was in the hallway that day. I heard Mr. Jameson say to Mrs. Jameson, "Don't worry, she doesn't need to be involved. We'll take care of it for her." He sounded like it was a done deal. Then Miss Hartman played the audio. The room went silent except for the low-quality recording. My father's voice rang out, "We signed for you. You didn't need to be involved." There was a long pause after it ended. Even the court reporter looked up for a second. My parents didn't move. Lily squinted like she wanted to object, but couldn't find a reason that didn't sound ridiculous. When it was my turn, I stood slowly. My knees didn't shake. I spoke plainly. I never gave permission to transfer the house. I never saw the deed until after it was filed. I didn't sign it, and I didn't authorize anyone to sign on my behalf. Then I handed the judge the envelope with Raymond Eldridge's original trust amendment and the final clause he'd filed shortly before passing, one that had been buried and conveniently ignored. "This document," I said, clearly, "names me as the rightful heir, not only to the home in question, but also to the Aspen property my grandfather purchased 10 years prior." The judge examined the clause carefully. Then he turned to the opposing counsel. "Did your clients disclose this?" Their lawyer stumbled. "Your Honor, we were under the impression that document had been superseded." The judge didn't blink. It wasn't, and forging a signature, especially in a civil matter concerning estate property, is no small oversight. He tapped his gavel once. "The trust manipulation is invalid. I hereby rule that Miss Kala Jameson is the sole legal heir to both properties, effective retroactively. The defendants are required to vacate both premises within 30 days. My mother's mouth fell open. My father looked like he aged 10 years in 5 seconds. And Lily, she dropped her gaze for the first time since the hearing began. I didn't smile. I just gathered my papers. As the room began to clear, I walked over to their table. My hands didn't shake when I reached into my tote and pulled out the gold ribbon, the same one Lily used to mock me. I set it down gently between them. Didn't say a word. It wasn't for them. It was for me. Let them keep the ribbon, the illusion, the performance, the hollow inheritance they thought they'd orchestrated. I had the real thing. I left the courthouse alone. No cameras, no crowds, just the sound of my heels clicking against linoleum and the faint buzz of fluorescent lights overhead. The parking lot was mostly empty. The sky above was soft with evening light. I didn't turn on the radio as I drove. The windows were down. The air was clean. I didn't need a victory speech. I didn't need an apology. They'd handed me a job ad to push me out. I walked out owning everything they tried to steal. 2 months later, I wake up to the sound of wind brushing through the tall pines outside my window. The mornings in Aspen are cooler now. Soft gold light slants through the glass, touching the wooden floors I'd polished by hand. I let my feet touch the ground slowly, bare toes pressing into the grain of the old pine planks. There's no rush. No one waiting with fake smiles or cold instructions. Just the house, mine. I walk the hallway without turning on any lights. My sketches hang on both sides now, framed in simple walnut, not to impress, but to live with. Each piece holds a moment I fought to keep for myself. One by one, I hung them here, not for a gallery, but for me. In the kitchen, the bread basket from my neighbors still sits untouched on the counter. Fresh rosemary bread. They dropped it off a week ago with a small card, "Welcome home, Culla." It wasn't the bread that moved me. It was the way they used my name like I'd always belonged here. I pull open the last drawer in the hallway credenza, a space I hadn't touched until now. I didn't expect to find much. Some envelopes, old batteries, a keychain without keys. But beneath the clutter, I noticed something tucked in a manila folder addressed in familiar handwriting. My heart stirs before my eyes fully confirm it. His handwriting. My grandfather's. The ink is faint, but still neat. He always wrote like he knew someone would read it carefully. I sit down on the hallway bench and open the letter. It's dated just 3 weeks before he passed. My breath catches. "Culla, I watched how they dismissed you. How they gave away what you earned like you were never meant to stand tall. But I saw. I always saw. I couldn't make them love you better. I couldn't undo what was already broken. But I made sure that when the time came, they wouldn't have the final say. They wouldn't hand you the key, so I made sure you'd own the door. I don't cry right away. Not the way people expect. There's no shaking or sobbing, just a stillness that lets the tears roll down gently, like dew gathering on leaves before dropping into the earth. He knew. Long before I had the words to explain, he already understood. By mid-morning, I'm behind the wheel of my car. No destination, just motion. The kind that clears your lungs and reminds you you're free to choose the direction. I take a slow detour past the house where I spent most of my life trying to earn space. The porch looks the same, though emptier. A forgotten ribbon, faded gold, flutters loosely from a bent nail beside the mailbox. They never took it down. Maybe they couldn't face what it symbolized. I don't stop. I don't even slow. The engine hums steadily as I pass, windows cracked just enough to let the crisp air in. I return to Aspen in the early afternoon. The sun has shifted higher now, dappling through the treetops. I walk into the house and head straight to the shelf beside the front door. From a small drawer, I take out a plain white box. Inside it, a key. No shine, no decoration, just metal. But it's the only one that ever truly meant something. I've labeled it with a strip of masking tape, not gifted, earned. I set it gently on the middle shelf where the sunlight hits around 2 p.m. every day, not to hide it, but to remind myself what's real doesn't need to scream. Just as I turn to head into the kitchen, my phone buzzes. I glance at the screen. Miss Hartman. Offer received for an exhibition in D.C. They want your full series. Call when you're ready. I smile. Not the kind of smile people wear when they've won something. The kind that comes from realizing you no longer need permission. I pour myself a cup of coffee. No rush. No need to jump. I lean on the counter, watching steam curl in the quiet. For the first time, everything begins on my terms. Sometimes, the key isn't what they give you. It's what they try to keep from you.